The forgotten signal. The distress call began as a whisper, a lone signal drifting across the void, faint, fractured, and old. It was encoded in a language most civilizations had long erased from their memory. The data string carried echoes of static, broken coordinates, and a single word repeated like a desperate heartbeat. Help! On the bridge of the KRYTH Dominion Patrol frigate Vale, Admiral Rockthor leaned forward, mandibles clicking in irritation. Who dares to transmit on ancient bands? No species has used these frequencies in 1,000 cycles. His sensor officer tilted her scaled head, narrowing her golden eyes as the signal scrolled across the displays. Admiral, I recognize this pattern. It is human. The bridge fell into silence. Even the hum of the engines seemed to retreat into shadow. The word human had not been spoken aloud in centuries. Impossible, Rockthor hissed. His claws drummed against the console. The humans burned themselves out. Their wars reduced their homeworld to ash. Their fleets gone. I have read the histories, none survived. Yet the signal exists, the officer replied. Her voice trembled despite the iron discipline expected aboard a Dominion warship. It comes from the Epsilon Scorpii sector, a fringe colony long abandoned after the Extinction War. Rockthor bared his teeth. Send a scout. Verify. If it is scavengers or pirates using the old myth to bait fools, we will burn them from the stars. But if, he cut himself off. He would not say it aloud. He would not give voice to the thought gnawing at the edges of his mind. Because if it was human, if even a fragment of their kind had endured, then the galaxy was not nearly as safe as they had believed. The forgotten fear. Long ago, humanity had been the spark of chaos in the galactic order. They had arrived late to the stars, primitive vessels screaming through void on engines held together with iron and desperation. But what they lacked in grace, they made up for in audacity. No one had fought wars like humans. They wielded strategies alien minds could not anticipate, turned defeats into ambushes, and sacrificed willingly in numbers that horrified every other race. For every world they lost, they made their enemies pay in fleets drowned in fire. And then, as suddenly as they had risen, they vanished. Some said nuclear war. Others believed their own AIs betrayed them. The official histories taught that Earth was nothing but glass and cinder, a dead relic orbiting a silent star. Civilizations breathed easier knowing humanity was gone. Their shadow lingered only in warnings whispered to new cadets. Never underestimate chaos-born species. Yet here was a signal, a pulse in the void, a human word carried on dead bands. A hunter hears the ghost. While the Dominion debated in council chambers, while their admirals whispered, another faction listened more closely. The Zyri Combine, rivals of the Dominion, intercepted the transmission. On board their battlespire Shalith, General Corrin laughed with cruel delight. So, the ghosts call out, and the Dominion hunts them. He raised his chalice of molten nectar, savoring the scent of scorched minerals. Perhaps we should let the Dominion waste their time chasing phantoms. But if humans truly crawl from their grave, his lieutenants shifted uneasily. General, one dared to say, surely humans are extinct. No colony could have survived without Earth. It must be a trick. Corrin's laughter deepened, low and thunderous. Then it will be amusing. But if it is humans, imagine the weapon we could make of them. Imagine the fear rekindled in every heart across the stars. Entire fleets would bow to us at the whisper of their return. The colonists who remembered. Far from both empires on a world forgotten by time, the signal was not a trick. The colony of New Thessalon had been born in secrecy. During the chaos of the final human wars, a fleet of civilians and rogue soldiers had fled Earth with what ships they could salvage. They disappeared into the black, hiding from both friend and foe, carrying only scraps of history and the stubborn refusal to die. For centuries they had endured in silence, growing, evolving, waiting, but now their world was dying. A tectonic fracture split their planet's crust, poisoning oceans, drowning cities. Their desperate engineers reactivated ancient arrays, hoping anyone would hear. They never expected the galaxy still remembered what human meant. Dr. Aidan Core, chief historian of New Thessalon, stared at the transmission logs with disbelief. We've reached someone. Someone has heard. General Ilara Vance, commander of the colony's defense forces, crossed her arms. Her uniform was worn, patched with centuries-old insignia. And now the galaxy knows we exist. You've doomed us all, Doctor. Aidan swallowed. We had no choice. Without aid, this planet will be uninhabitable within 5 years. We needed help. Ilara's eyes burned like steel under firelight. You don't understand. The galaxy didn't just forget us. They wanted us gone. If they find us, they won't send aid. They'll send fire. The first response. The stars above New Thessalon shimmered one night as ships entered orbit. They were not human ships. Ilara's prediction proved true. The Dominion frigates emerged from warp, their hulls bristling with weaponry, their banners stretched across the void. The colonists watched from below as the sky filled with foreign war. And then the broadcast came. This is Admiral Rockthor of the KRYTH Dominion. The alien voice hissed across every frequency. You are hereby ordered to surrender and identify yourselves. If you are indeed human, your extinction was incomplete. We will correct that error. If you are pretenders, you will burn all the same. Panic rippled through the colony. Some prayed, some wept, some reached for weapons older than memory. Dr. Aidan Core whispered, trembling, we called for help, and death answered. But Ilara Vance only stared at the skies, jaw set like stone. No, she murmured. This is what it means to be human. We do not beg for mercy. We fight. And if the galaxy has forgotten that, then we will remind them. Her words were the first spark, a whisper of fire that would ignite into something far greater. Because Earth was not dead. Humanity was not extinct. And soon the stars would remember. The voice in the static. The control chamber of the Vayari frigate Calisette was still buzzing with disbelief. The distress beacon they had stumbled upon was ancient, its frequency bands no longer used by any known empire. And yet, when they boosted the signal and transmitted a reply, something answered. Not a code, not a machine echo, a voice. Captain Aelith had replayed it 3 times now, his scaled fingers tightening around the armrest of his command chair with every pass. The words were strange, guttural, yet perfectly translated through the ship's autolinguistic core. This is Earth Command. Distress call received. Hold position. Assistance inbound. That was all. Simple. Direct. But enough to shatter centuries of assumptions. Earth Command, murmured First Officer Varix, his tendrils shifting in unease. That name should not exist. Earth was eliminated. A cinder world. The last records say its surface was glassed nearly 600 years ago. And humans, added Navigation Chief Talvek, were declared extinct. Captain Aelith replayed the transmission again, unable to quell the knot of dread forming in his chest. The voice had not sounded like a ghost, nor like a recording scraped from history. There was life in it, sharp, commanding, carrying the confidence of someone who still believed Earth was a sovereign power. The Council needs to know, Varix pressed, his tendrils curling tightly. If this is genuine, we may have just rediscovered the most dangerous species the galaxy ever faced. Aelith knew the legends as well as anyone. Every cadet was told the stories in hushed tones. Humanity, the insurgent race, the unpredictable tacticians, the warriors who fought like cornered predators. They had resisted every empire that tried to subjugate them, winning wars they had no right to win. And then they vanished. Some said they destroyed themselves. Others whispered that the Keelan Dominion had erased them with firestorms. Yet some, those who feared the dark, believed the humans had never died at all. That they had gone into hiding, waiting for the galaxy to forget them. And now here was a voice that claimed to be answering now. The crew of the Calisette gathered around the central holodable as the engineers worked feverishly to analyze the signal. Code fragments, carrier waves, and packet structures sprawled across the display. It's authentic, said lead engineer Sola, his crest feathers stiff with unease. The technology is archaic. Nothing like current transmission protocols. But the encryption markers. He paused, swallowed hard. They match archived Terran encryption keys. Dead silence fell across the chamber. Varrix's voice was almost a whisper. So it's real. Aelith closed his eyes for a moment. Real. Humanity was real. And somehow, impossibly, they had just spoken across centuries of silence. Captain! The sudden alarm from Sensor Chief Iltrin jolted the chamber back to life. Long-range anomaly detected. Subspace distortion. Vector approaching us from the outer edge of the system. The crew froze. Aelith's throat tightened. Display it. The holodeble flickered, shifting to a projection of the star system around them. From the edge of the Oort cloud, a ripple of energy was blooming like a wound in space. Jagged lines of distortion tore across the map, accompanied by the piercing whine of stressed sensors. Is it a warp breach? Talvek asked. No, Iltrin said, shaking his head in disbelief. Not any warp signature I recognize. It's crude, brutal, but powerful. Something is tearing its way in without harmonics. His voice faltered. It's forcing the universe to make way. Aelith felt the words strike deep. Forcing the universe. What kind of race used technology like that? Can we identify the source? The answer came with a rising crescendo of alarms. Yes, Iltrin whispered. It's a ship. And Captain, it's human. The bridge crew erupted into a storm of noise, shouts, gasps, denials. Aelith slammed his hand against the armrest, silencing them. Focus. The holodeble shifted, lines sharpening into the jagged outline of an approaching vessel. It was nothing like the sleek curves of Veari design or the ornate spires of the Dominion warfleets. This was raw geometry, angles, plates, and brutal functionality. Its hull bore scars, plating welded over ancient wounds, like an apex predator carrying trophies of its own battles. And across its forward prow, letters were stenciled in a script so old most empires no longer remembered it. UNS Vigilant. Aelith's hearts lurched. This was no ghost, no derelict. The Vigilant was alive, its reactor burning like a newborn star, its weapons arrays lit with dormant menace. Impossible, Varrix muttered, backing away from the table. That ship is older than our empire. It should have been dust. How can it still exist? As if to answer, the ship spoke. The same voice that had echoed through their comms earlier now roared across every channel at once. This is Earth Command Vessel Vigilant. Identify yourselves. The sound of it shook the bridge crew. It was not just a demand, it was a challenge, a warning wrapped in simple words. Aelith forced himself to respond. His voice steady though his blood pounded in his veins. This is Captain Aelith of the Veari frigate Caliset. We detected a distress beacon and responded. We believed Earth destroyed. There was a pause, a silence heavy enough to crush. And then the human voice returned, slower this time, dripping with suspicion. Reports of our destruction were exaggerated. The tension in the chamber became suffocating. Varrix whispered, Captain, if they're truly back, the balance of the galaxy will break. Aelith did not answer. He was staring at the image of the Vigilant, and in his chest he felt something deeper than fear. It was instinct, the kind that told a prey animal when a predator was near. The humans had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same. The voice from Earth, the station's control room, was dead silent. Not the quiet of routine, but the suffocating silence that follows a miracle no one can process. Every eye was locked on the comms console, every breath caught in their throats. The waveform still pulsed across the display. Clear, steady, impossibly human. The voice repeated, calm but commanding. This is the Earth Defense Fleet. Identify yourselves. Kaelin's scaled fingers trembled above the console. He was the first to break the silence, his voice raw. Earth? That cannot be. Earth has been gone for 6 centuries. Humans are extinct. Beside him, Commander Draal's mandibles clicked in agitation, his massive frame quivering with disbelief. Extinct or not, someone has spoken, and they know the word Earth. His 4 black eyes narrowed on the glowing console. "We will answer. Prepare transmission." But Kalen hesitated. His heart pounded like a drum against his ribs. If this was real, if humanity had survived, then everything the galaxy believed, everything his people were taught, was a lie. For centuries, Earth had been a hushed myth, a burned world left behind after humanity's collapse. How could a dead race answer a distress call? Still, duty compelled him. His claws tapped across the panel. "Channel open," he whispered. Drawl leaned toward the transmitter, his gravelly voice steady. "This is Commander Drawl of the Coalition Relief Fleet, responding to the distress signal from the Leary sector. Identify yourself. Are you truly human?" The channel crackled. Static hissed, long enough to make Kalen think the miracle was breaking apart. Then the voice came again, sharper now, carrying an edge of iron authority. "Confirmed. We are human. You are speaking to Admiral Celine Ward of the Earth Defense Fleet." The room erupted. Gasps, exclamations, disbelief. A few of the younger officers stumbled back from their stations as though the very name human burned their ears. Kalen gripped the edge of his console, his knees weak. "Admiral? Earth Defense Fleet?" Celine Ward's voice cut through their chaos again. "Your fleet is compromised. The distress call you answered was bait. Identify the number of ships and survivors under your command." Immediately, Drawl stiffened. He wasn't used to being spoken to like a subordinate, but something about her tone, so firm, so unyielding, made even him falter. We field 12 relief vessels, none combat class. Survivors aboard number less than 5,000. We are ill-equipped for conflict." The silence on the other end stretched, heavy as stone. Then Celine's reply came, cold as steel. "Then obey my orders if you want to live." The human presence. In the minutes that followed, the impossible became reality. The humans, or whatever they truly were, provided coordinates. Drawl hesitated, but Kalen saw something in his commander's usually unreadable eyes. The flicker of hope. They adjusted course, engines burning bright as the coalition ships drifted toward the designated vector. The crew murmured in hushed tones. The name Earth passed between them like forbidden scripture. Kalen's thoughts swirled. His people, the Quran, had long whispered about the fall of humanity. Some claimed humans had destroyed themselves with weapons too powerful to control. Others said they had simply vanished into the dark, leaving their homeworld barren and poisoned. Either way, their extinction was taught as fact. To suggest otherwise was to invite ridicule. And yet, here was proof. A voice, alive, commanding, reaching out from the void. Kalen leaned toward Drawl. "Commander, what if it truly is them? What if humans survived?" Drawl's mandibles clacked, his voice low. "Then the galaxy is about to change. For better or for much worse." The distress trap. Hours later, their ships drifted into the shadow of the system's dying star. The space around them was littered with debris. Splintered hulls, drifting wreckage, and the gutted remains of old war machines. Kalen scanned the void. No life signs detected. But there's movement on the periphery. Before he could finish, alarms blared. Ships decloaked from the darkness. Sleek, spined vessels bristling with weapons. The Drexhar, a race of marauders, feared across the spiral arm. Kalen's blood ran cold. They set the trap. They're here. Drawl cursed, slamming his clawed hand against the console. Shields up. Evasive maneuvers. But the relief fleet was no match for warships. The Drexhar moved like predators, encircling them, weapons primed to strike. Kalen's stomach clenched as targeting locks painted across their hulls. Just as despair settled in, a new blip appeared on the tactical display. Then another. Then dozens. Ships, sleek, angular, and utterly unlike anything Kalen had seen before, slid out of the void, their hulls glinting with the light of the dying star. Each one bore the insignia of Earth. The comms erupted with Admiral Ward's voice. "This is the Earth Defense Fleet. Engage all hostile signatures. Coalition ships, hold formation behind us." Kalen's jaw fell open. Dozens of human warships had materialized from the dark like ghosts. They moved with terrifying precision, their engines humming with power no coalition vessel could match. The Drexar fired first, a storm of plasma tearing across the void. But the human ships answered instantly. Their weapons weren't plasma, weren't beams. They were something else entirely. Bolts of compressed energy, crackling lances of light that tore through Drexar hulls as though they were paper. In moments, the predators became prey. Whole Drexar cruisers split apart, their bodies blooming into fireballs that were swallowed by the dark. Kalen could only whisper, voice trembling. Gods, the humans, they're unstoppable. The meeting, when the last Drexar ship was reduced to drifting wreckage, silence returned. But this time, it was a silence of awe. One of the human vessels detached from the formation, drifting toward the coalition flagship. Its hull bore a name etched in ancient script, UNS Dauntless. Kalen's chest tightened. That ship was human history made real. Admiral Celine Ward's voice crackled through again. Prepare to receive us. We are boarding. Moments later, the airlock hissed open. Kalen stood behind Drawl as the boarding ramp extended. The sound of boots, human boots, rang against the deck. They entered. Tall, broad-shouldered figures clad in dark armor, helmets gleaming. At their head was a woman with eyes sharp as blades and a presence that filled the room. Admiral Celine Ward, she introduced, her voice steady. Earth is not extinct. Remember that. Kalen's breath caught in his throat. The myths had come alive before his eyes. Humanity had returned. And if their power against the Drexar was any measure, the galaxy would never be the same again. The silence before the storm. The great void of space had always been silent, but the silence that followed Earth's unexpected arrival was different. It wasn't the natural quiet of the stars. It was the silence of fear, awe, and waiting. The Keldrath Dominion fleet, once arrogant and certain of their victory, now hung uncertainly in orbit above the ruined colony. Their long, claw-shaped warships glimmered faintly in the system's pale light, their energy cannons idling but ready. Yet none dared to fire, because across the battlefield, slowly emerging from the cover of the asteroid belt, were ships they had thought gone forever. Human ships, not ruins, not relics, not echoes of a dead race, but real, active, alive. The vessel at their lead was unlike anything the Keldrath had ever seen. Its design was sleek, predatory, wrapped in plating that seemed to bend light around it. Strange patterns pulsed faintly across its hull, glowing like veins of molten silver. It wasn't just a warship, it was a ghost returned to haunt the living. The Keldrath fleet commander, General Viacor, slammed his clawed hand down on the console. His voice rattled across the fleet's comms. Do not fire, not yet. They cannot be what they appear. Humanity is dead, extinct. Nothing remains but scraps. This is a trick, but his officers were not convinced. Every scan they ran only confirmed the impossible. The energy signatures, the hull composites, the very encryption patterns in the transmissions, these were undeniably human. Across the colony below, survivors gathered near the still-smoking ruins of their once-thriving cities. Refugees who had huddled in caves and shelters now stumbled out, gazing upward. And when they saw the human fleet descending, tears streaked through grime on their faces. For generations, they had been told the same story. Humanity was gone, their homeworld destroyed, their legacy shattered. Yet here they were, answering a call that should never have been heard. Captain Alara Miles stood on the command deck of the lead ship, the Eidolon. Her dark eyes scanned the tactical display, watching the Dominion fleet as it shifted nervously. Around her, human officers worked with cold precision, as if they had trained their entire lives for this single encounter. Status? Alara asked. Shields charged. Weapons primed. All wings report ready, Commander Reeve replied, his voice low but firm. Alara's jaw tightened. And the colony? A comms officer responded. Distress beacons confirm civilian survivors. Estimated 10,000 remain. They're watching us. For a moment, Alara said nothing. She felt the weight of centuries pressing down on her shoulders. The myths, the silence, the fear. Humanity had chosen to vanish from galactic affairs long ago, retreating into the darkness. Entire empires had risen and fallen in their absence. And now, stepping into the light again, they carried the burden of expectation. "General Viacor is hailing us," Reeve said. Alara allowed herself a thin smile. "Put him through." The view screen shifted, filling with the snarling visage of the Keldrath general. His scales were dark and scarred, his eyes narrow slits of burning gold. "You are no humans," he growled. "This is a fabrication, projection. Humanity was destroyed 2 centuries ago." Alara's voice was calm, steady as stone. "Then tell me, General, who do you think is speaking to you now?" The general's lip curled. His silence was louder than his words. "You attacked a defenseless colony," Alara continued. "You slaughtered civilians to expand your empire. And when their call reached the void, it reached us. That call was answered by Earth." The bridge of the Eidolon was silent, every officer frozen as Alara uttered that word. Earth. The name itself carried weight, like thunder rolling across the stars. The Dominion had never feared Earth before, for it had been forgotten. But now its name struck like a blade. Viacor hissed, his pride battling against the fear creeping into his heart. "You think a handful of relic ships can stop the Dominion? You think your myths can frighten us into surrender? We command 1,000 fleets. We consume worlds. Humanity is dust beneath our claws." Alara leaned forward, her gaze piercing through the screen. "Then you should have left dust alone." The comms snapped off. The silence returned. But it was no longer passive. It was charged, the heavy stillness before a storm unleashed. The Dominion fleet adjusted formation, their warships bristling with energy. Their cannons began to glow, each one capable of incinerating entire cityscapes. The odds were overwhelming, 50 Dominion ships against barely a dozen human vessels. But Alara knew something Viacor did not. Humanity had not been idle in its exile. "Deploy the wings," she ordered. From the Eidolon's flanks, squadrons of fighters launched into the void. They were small, almost insect-like compared to Dominion warships, but their movements were uncanny. They darted in patterns impossible to predict, weaving between sensor locks, bending trajectories in ways that defied Dominion algorithms. On the ground, survivors gasped as streaks of silver light danced across the sky. The first shots of the battle crackled like thunder through the heavens. Dominion cannons unleashed lances of plasma, tearing through the void with apocalyptic force. Yet time and again the human ships shifted, moving not with panic but with a kind of practiced inevitability. The Eidolon itself did not fire, not yet. Alara watched the Dominion fleet move, waiting, listening, as though she were playing not a battle but a symphony. Every Dominion maneuver was a note, every shot a chord. And when she finally raised her hand, her voice rang out like the strike of a conductor's baton. "Now!" The Eidolon's hull lit up with cascading patterns, lines of silver light racing across its surface. From its core, a single beam erupted, not plasma, not missiles, not any weapon the Dominion knew. It was pure energy, compressed into a lance of burning white fire. The beam tore through the void, cutting across the Dominion's lead cruiser. There was no explosion, just silence. Then the ship simply broke apart, severed cleanly in two. Gasps filled both sides of the conflict. Even the Dominion fleet faltered, their formations scattering in sudden panic. On the colony below, survivors screamed. Not in fear, but in a raw, desperate joy. For the first time in generations, they believed again. On his bridge, Viacor roared with fury, but his eyes betrayed him. For in that moment, he realized what his ancestors had once feared. Humanity was not extinct. Humanity had been waiting, and now the silence of the stars was broken by war.